everyone. Welcome to this 30-minute COVID-19 interview on creating digital community. My name is Jodi, and I am so excited to be with you today. I work at Elim Fellowship, and at Elim Fellowship, we are committed to strengthening you as leaders. And I am pumped because I have three amazing pastors that I'm going to be interviewing today. We have Pastor Laurie, Pastor Judah, and Pastor Josh with us. And so before we just dive into this topic on creating digital community, could you all just introduce yourself briefly about, who you are, what church you pastor, and what you do? So go for it.
Sure. My name is Laurie Bolton, and I am pastoring at New Testament Christian Church in Rochester, or the town of Greece, to be more specific. So we are cold right now and ready for spring to fully arrive.
Nice.
My name is Judah. I pastor a church here in Indiana, Pennsylvania. I pastor Word of Grace Fellowship. We're a smallish church, and I'm a dad with 4 kids, so somebody send help.
Send help now.
And my name is Josh Wypij. I'm an associate pastor at Pioneer Christian Fellowship in Arcade, New York. I'm also a father. We have 3 daughters, and I have a wife too. So
That's good.
Send us help.
That helps.
Send us help. Send us help. Well, I am so excited to be with you all and really to get your ideas and what's working, what's not working for you all in this area of creating digital community. For many of us, we have been scrambling to try to figure out how do we create community when we're not together, when we're not physically together. And so my first question, I'm going to first send it to you, Laurie, is how are you finding in this time where we're scattered that you are creating digital community in your church? How are you caring for people? How are you making them feel connected to the vision and each other during this time? So first I'll give it to you, Laurie, to answer that question.
That's a big question that can go multiple places. Like everybody, we're doing online church right now, but in terms of the actual caring for people, there's so many different ways that we can do that right now. One thing I noticed when I do Facebook Live is if somebody pops up on it, is like giving them a shout out just to make them feel like, oh, they recognize that I'm here. Even with our moderator, with our online services, people are commenting and responding to each person and just giving them encouragement through that. Obviously, personal text and different things like that is a big deal, but any way to personalize in the midst of this jumbo-ness of online has been, I think, that just the most important, just making sure that people are recognized for even being there is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's really good. For us, one of the things that we've found that really helps is trying to ask questions in the formats that people are used to receiving them. Because one of the things that you'll find, we can talk about this later if we get time, but finding something that works for everybody. Some people I won't respond to text messages. Other people if you didn't send me an email, I didn't get it. There's a whole range. So trying to get people's responses to a common question or a common theme, and then doing Facebook Lives that gives me content to draw people's responses in and say, hey, Joe said this the other day, he texted me, or this, so you're trying to bring people into this common moment. So even if they're watching it after the fact, that Joe said this last week, and that Sally said this, and so you get different connection points, even though you're not really physically or in the same space. So I've tried to leverage our video content with trying to get other people's, if it's an older person who I just managed to see them in their driveway, I get their conversation and bring it into the video content. So that way it helps connect all the different generations as well. And because it'll be available once we go offline, when we're not online church anymore, during the week, people can still view it and still know what everyone else is up to,
Yeah, how about for you, Josh? What are you finding?
Well, I think you guys are all live streaming your services, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing it, but we're actually doing it live. And I think, Laurie, you guys do it pre-recorded and then premiere it or whatever on Facebook.
Yep.
So we're doing it just on YouTube, and I found just strictly on YouTube in the live chat section is that there are so many people that are having community during the service. And what's also kind of funny is the same people who kind of like talk too much or say things inappropriate during church are the same people that are still saying those things in the chat. I'm like, oh my gosh.
So great. It's so great.
Exactly. We do a Facebook, we have a group, which is like a prayer and praise report and announcement kind of group that's just for members and attenders of the church. However, what we've done, we've been advertising, is like, even if you don't go to PCF, but you're looking for that online community, we're asking, just send a request to join. And that way we're trying to connect people that are outside of the church. One of the cool things that happened on our live stream a couple weeks ago, somebody had invited it. I mean, the amount of people that are sharing the links is just amazing. But this one lady came in and she wrote in the comments, she was like, is this how you really do church every week? These songs? Do you really do this? I love this. I can't believe you did. The lady had never been to church before.
Wow.
And so
Awesome.
she's gaining, community online in this weird, different, like a way that I did not think that church was going to happen. For somebody to find community, and she's being able to get plugged in. She got into a Facebook group and all that kind of stuff. The other thing that we're using, and I'm trying to push, is Marco Polo. If you don't know what it is, if you're watching, you're like, what the heck is that? It is a pool game, but on top of that, it's also an app. It's free, and it's basically like video messaging, but almost like a walkie-talkie. And I think it's a great platform if anybody has small groups and things like that. You get your small group leader to get Marco Polo and, invite the people that are in their small group. And that way they can have, because let's be honest. I mean, Laurie, I'm sure Judah and Laurie, you guys know we can't do this by ourselves. There's no way. So what I've been trying to do is that, and I know there's a lot of things, but the other thing we did is the old fashioned telephone and actually calling people that are in our directory.
Old fashioned telephone.
Old fashioned,
So
yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned the old, I'm totally cutting you off, but the old fashioned telephone.
I'm used to it.
Yeah. No, tag teaming that, because aside from like the digital stuff and people being cared for, we started off with just our kids and sending all of them a postcard in the mail with this personal message, and then decided, you know what, we're going to do this for our whole church. So it's a big undertaking, but it's like everyone getting snail mail. Like, I love snail mail when it's like legit something. So I'm glad you mentioned the telephone, because it's the same with the mail,
Yeah. I mean, one thing that just to add on top of what you guys just said, we found that making sure our connect cards are on every social post that we do. So rather than just saying, hey, while you're in the live service, if you want to connect, this is where the connect card is. The link, I mean, because it's as simple as just posting the link in the description. So we've just made it part of our, like, almost like syntax for what we put down underneath each of our socials, if it's on Instagram, on YouTube, Facebook, wherever it is. So it'll be the service link and the details, but it will also have connect or ask for prayer. So that creates opportunities for people who have never done it. I mean, just like what Josh was saying, we had someone who had disconnected from church and they participated in communion for the first time in 20 years.
Wow.
So like, suddenly somebody who had totally checked out checked back in, and it was wonderful. So that's awesome.
Yeah. That's so great.
Can I add another thing? I forgot.
Of course you can, Pastor Josh. Go for it.
So my pastor is not on Facebook, and for anybody watching, he's just not going to. He doesn't even have a cell phone. Like he's just, I love the man to death, but he just does not want that. So one of the ways, it's like I had to find a way for him to be able to connect aside from the Sunday morning service. So one of the things that we're doing is his wife, Jodi, she has a smartphone, all that. So she's been filming him, sending me the link, and I've been uploading it to our church page and stuff. And it's basically encouragement and helping people through this kind of time. It's like a little devotional that's usually 5 to 10 minutes. So that's something you could do if there's people that are watching this, or like maybe you're watching this and you're like, I don't know how to do that stuff. Listen, contact any person in your church that's under the age of 30 and ask them if they can help you. You can do it.
That's so true.
For sure.
I concur.
Yeah, I think we're all finding in this time, like you all were sharing, how your reach is expanding so much as pastors, as leaders. People who would never step foot inside of a church, now churches in their homes and in their living rooms, and you're just seeing just people engaging more and more. And another thing, within churches, we all have these small kind of groups. You know, you have your children's ministry, you have your youth group, you have your the young adults, and then the adults. So how are you finding, for maybe you can touch on one or two specific like subcategories of how you're finding, you know, what is working in creating digital community for youth groups? What is working for creating digital communities in, you know, children's groups? What are you finding in that area? Judah, you could go first if you want to take
Sure.
that one.
Yeah, one of the things that we found is, regardless of age, people are already exhausted by the amount of digital content that's coming their way.
Mhm.
Like small groups, there's only so many Zoom meetings you can be in, you know, and if you say the word Zoom one more time, it's like people have got to that point. We're at that point right now, you know. It's about 4.5 weeks in, and we're like, don't you say another Zoom call, you know. So it's with things like that where we found that trying to dial back all of those things to a place where we just do short videos which people can engage with regardless of whether they were live. Did you catch it live? Were you there for the Q&A? Were you there for the chat?
Mhm.
You know, but something that's short, not long. So a devotion, it was really interesting talking to our teaching pastors to say, hey, you're gonna have to give an encouragement in under 2 minutes. And it was awesome. I mean, because our guys are used to speaking for 45, 50 minutes. So it's like, no, you're only going to get 2. And that includes your scripture reference and you know, actually talking through it. So it's been really good to see that people from the young age groups as well as the older age groups found something that they could chew on during the day. And it was short enough that it could work on Instagram. It was short enough that it would work on YouTube and on Facebook and on other platforms. And we would include it in our announcement emails and things like that. So people would get a consistent like word of encouragement that regardless of what age group you're in, you'd still be able to get something from it.
Yeah, that's good.
That's really good. I like that you mentioned the 2-minute thing, because I check out after something that's a little too long. So it's a good point.
Yeah.
I had found, you had mentioned another Zoom meeting, but I found that for our youth group anyways, that's been growing each week. But one of the things that I've had to do, I've really had to like focus on is preparing ahead of time for the Zoom meetings, because I've been putting together games for the kids. If that's one of my jobs is youth ministry at the church. So I've been trying to put together games that are interactive, that I can screen share and show them things that are on this, like Would You Rather, but in today's day and age, like what we're going through, COVID version or whatever. So we've been doing that kind of stuff. I feel like that's helped the kids because their parents tell me they look forward to it every single week.
Nice.
And I'm excited because, I mean, there's definitely the kids are like, I'm not doing that. I mean, for sure, there's a lot of those out there. They're like, nah, I don't want to do it. And I got the kids that like, you know, won't even let me see them on the screen and they won't do that. But I try to get them interactive, and that's part of the thing. Like this right now, we're all talking, we're all engaged because we have a part in it. And I feel like if it's just me talking or something like that, then it's not going to work the same.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, Josh, I'm glad you mentioned Zoom for teenagers, because I'm finding the exact opposite and not really seeing them very much engaged on Zoom right now. So we're doing games. The guy that's overseeing it's been a lot of fun. It's like, I don't know why a kid wouldn't want to be on this, but Zoom is not really pulling in our teenagers. I don't know if it's because of all like the hoopla around the safety of Zoom right now, if parents are freaked out or whatnot, but we've definitely had to try other avenues, at least for our teenagers. So
What are those avenues that you're doing?
Yes.
Oh, I'm still looking into those.
I mean,
Are you going to get a TikTok?
I can
Are you going to
piggyback
get a
on that one.
TikTok?
No, I will
No,
not. I will not. I have my limits.
Lori's going to do the TikTok, you know, do
Yeah.
all those dances.
For our youth group, one of the things that our youth director found was we got people on House Party, and that was, if for those of you who don't know, House Party is an app where you can invite friends on and you get to play games like apples to apples ish kind of games, or trivia. You can do like different games like that, and it's pretty interactive apart from just the chat facility, or FaceTiming kind of facility.
Mhm.
So I think
Yeah.
that really works for them, and we've seen the engagement go up on that. So
Mhm.
as opposed to Zoom, which I think for most teenagers, unless they were told that this is where the church is doing stuff, it's not something they would look out for, because Zoom is totally an adult oriented platform. Even the way it's laid out and all of that, it's very, very business like. So that also affects how people who are non-tech revolution people
Mhm.
find it an extremely difficult platform in general. Like even where the mute button is on Zoom, it's on the far left bottom, and like, do I hit the microphone to mute myself, or hit the microphone to unmute? It's like things like that are confusing a lot of people who didn't grow up in what I would call the millennial kind of crowd. So anyone in Gen Z is looking at more sort of short video based kind of like, so I think the thing that you talked about, Marco Polo, is a great platform for people who are used to putting their face in front of a camera, which is the teenagers. They're used to doing that. Older people, not so much. So I think those are things that we need to factor in when we're saying, hey, this is the platform we're going to choose for engaging this segment.
Mhm. I think we're all finding that during this time we try things. It's like, okay, that didn't work, or let me try this, let me try that, or what worked for one specific area doesn't necessarily work for another. Even within churches, people have different communities and different ways that churches relate to them, your DNA as a church. And so really what you all are finding is like, okay, for our church, for our DNA, what's working, what's out there. Okay, we try this, it's not working, we're going to try this. So for you, starting with you, Pastor Josh, what has been something that's been either the most frustrating or the most challenging thing about creating digital community?
Live streaming. I feel like those first couple of weeks, I mean, think about it, like the large churches, the Hillsongs, that kind of stuff, they've been doing this for so long. This is nothing. They're like, whatever, we can get that together. For everybody else, especially in Elim Fellowship, I'm sure we're all like, you're running around with your head, like literally, like you're trying to balance your children, and you're trying to do, like, from the very get-go, I started doing these like live stream, like just with my phone. I set it up and I was giving people updates of what was happening. Here's what the church is doing here. I think Alex came on a couple times actually to watch, but here's what we're doing and that kind of stuff. So that stuff's easy. But the problem for me, you didn't ask this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. The problem I'm seeing is churches that aren't doing anything. And I'm thinking to myself, like, if you have a phone, all you need is a phone. If you have a phone, then you have the ability to live stream. There really shouldn't be any churches, in my opinion, that aren't doing anything. I don't even care if it's good or not. Like, it doesn't have to be great. It just, I think people are just yearning for community. They're yearning for something that feels normal, something that feels like they're not alone. And the church should be there for that. So if you're a pastor and you're watching this, you're like, I haven't done anything. Listen, let me just encourage you. You can do it. It's super easy. Just Google. If you don't know how to do something, just Google it. Google's really easy and that'll help you. But that's the one thing. And the other problem is people in our area. We're in a rural area. The church is around 400 people, but we have a larger community that doesn't have access to high-speed internet, which sounds mind-blowing that that's even possible. But that would be the big challenge.
That's a problem. That's a problem.
That's a big problem.
In fact, we looked at a house, virtually online, and we were looking at it. It's like, oh, this looks so nice. This looks so great. And then we found out it didn't have internet. I'm like, nope, not doing it. No.
Forget the house.
Forget that. I can't do that.
Ain't doing that.
That's awesome. How about for you, Judah and Laurie? What are you finding has been the most challenging or frustrating thing in creating digital community?
For me, I know my question, or rather my hardship, I think, is not so much on the digital details as much as helping the church understand that this is not a, oh, this is not ideal season.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be something where we transition to, this is the opportunity God has given us to gather. And I think that has been the hardest part, to get people to get out of the, oh, this is just one of those, this too shall pass kind of thing. I was like, stop. If one more person says this too shall pass, you know, because I think there is that whole sense of, oh, this is all very transitionary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is just here for a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that's the wrong way to think about our online engagement. I was like, the church has woefully, and this is across America, but globally, been behind, the church has been behind where the culture has been.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the whole culture has, I mean, 10 years ago, the culture had already moved to online.
Yeah.
Just in our general social interactions. It's church people who are suddenly discovering that everybody else thinks this is a legit way to gather, except for church people. So, well, why aren't we gathering? You know, we should be gathering, and this is what the church. I was like, we are gathering. The problem is you're just not comfortable with the idea that this is legit. So, so when you get the church to the point where you realize community is more and more going to be spread out. It's not going to be something like, how many people did I get in a room? Church attendance is going to become one of the most irrelevant things as far as when people are talking about how does church grow, how do we measure it? Church attendance will now drop in how important it is as one of those indicators, because our engagement is far more important with how many people can we say, have you moved on? Have you been discipled in the Lord? How, are you growing in the word? Those are going to be the key points. So helping the church to get out of their very churchy mindset or church building mindset into saying, are we sharing things as a community? So getting that transition, I would say, is the hardest part of this season, because a lot of people are being forced into it and they don't get a choice in it now. Before it was like, no, if this church is into online, I'm going somewhere else. And then they would find a church that didn't do all of that stuff. Whereas now it's every church does it. The issue is, how do I engage with it?
Yeah, that's good.
Such a good point. And even reminding our people of the testimonies coming out of online church right now, you know, like we've already talked about, more people coming in. I've had friends that would never set foot in my church that have been joining us online and then texting afterwards what they learned. And it's like, been really awesome to me, you know, and even realizing like the online giving thing, like having that set up and that people can give, and this is awesome. And other people are giving because it's more accessible versus just giving within the building. So the challenge for me, I personally am loving the challenge. Jodi, I love online stuff, and I wanted to go to school for broadcasting back in the day. So to me, it's like, hey, I get to do some of this. And, you know, the scriptures talk about being all things to all men and blah, blah, blah. So finding different, I think one of the frustrating things is like, is this reaching a need right now in terms of like for kids, like what we're providing for the kids and specifically for that. And, you know, recognizing that some people aren't online and like, okay, did they get an email or are they getting a snail mail or, you know, every now and then, like thinking of those different things of that can be like, you think of individuals in your church, you know, and it's like, are they being cared for right now? Is this working for them? And then I think sometimes the consumerism that's been in church world every now and then, that would probably be my biggest frustration. It hasn't been mega right now, but a lot of this is new to us, having online only church and what we're creating each week. And then sometimes you get a few of those comments and you're like, well, bless the Lord. I'm just going to lay hands on you because like we are doing everything we can and it's only a small group of people that can even do it right now. And so sometimes it's like, I appreciate you want to give good feedback, but do it. I don't know. Like every now and then it's like,
when
okay,
they say,
like literally I am like giving my all right now. And that comment is just not helping.
Or they say, like the one guy said, well, the one camera looks a little too dark. I think it's a little too dark. And Pastor Jeff looked a little orange. I'm like, come on, are you serious? Like, I got 3 cameras set up. They're not all going to be perfect. Like, if we get one good camera, that's like, that's 2 more than we had before. So
let me see your iPhone do that.
Exactly. Oh, geez. No, that kind of stuff.
I'm very grateful for the people that have been like very vocal about, hey, this has been so good and we appreciate it. It's like, that's just been gold right now because it's like, thank you, because we're doing this for you. We're thinking of you. We want to do as much as we can. But we're still experimenting and learning as we go.
It's very true. I think a lot of leaders right now, we're putting so much effort into online things and community and creating that at the end of the day, we are tired. Not tired, but it's like we're giving our all into this. And, it's not perfect and we're learning as we go, but it's like we're giving all that we can in this season. Just
For
good.
sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just before, I just want to add something just to help or encourage just smaller church pastors. I mean, my church was about 140, 150 people before all of this happened. And one of the things that I'm finding is rather than trying to like Josh was encouraging us to, don't get afraid about starting, even if you have a phone to start. But one of the things that in this transition of how hard it is going to be to move the church to understanding that community is happening differently. The church no longer gets to define how community happens.
Wow.
That's a big thing. We were so used to setting the tone for our people that this is how community happens. Small group, you go there, you do this, you go to this Bible study, Sunday school. We drove the narrative, whereas now the community drives the narrative on how we gather and things like that. So for us to remember, if we're a small church pastor, or even if you've got resources, do things that are sustainable in the long term. So don't just think about this season.
That's good.
So like if you're doing something live streaming now, say, how am I going to keep live streaming when we get back together? How am I going to keep the Facebook chats or the Q&As or whatever it is that I started? Don't just suddenly drop everything the moment your building opens.
Yes, that's good.
Find ways to go with where God's giving an opportunity right now.
Amen.
That's very good. One last question I have is, starting with you, Laurie, what is your top tip that you would give people for creating digital community? You could think of, this is my top word of advice for you as pastors, as leaders in creating digital community. This is what it is.
That's a good question. If you've already started it, I would say just keep going, and just be yourself. I think that's super important right now, especially for our churches. People want to be connected to who you are, and being yourself on there. It's so easy in social media world to try and be somebody else, but just being yourself and just being real with people, I think is really important.
Absolutely. You go, Pastor Josh.
Okay. I mean, as far as
point. Josh is so himself, and I love it. It means so much.
Like, okay.
I don't know. The weird thing, I just don't understand why there's so much. Well, you kind of touched on it, Judah. It's like there's so much there's so much hesitancy and resentment. It's like, I believe that the church at this point should be joyful. I preach on it Sunday. It's like we're called to be joyful in all circumstances. And that means even when you can't have your community in your church. And I feel like as leaders, if we're not presenting joy and we're all in the dumps, I mean, I won't name churches, but there was a church that I watched online, and the first thing the pastor did, it was like, a camera in his office or something like that. And he was like, well, church, this is so hard not to be here. It was all down and like sad. And I'm like, man, come on. Like, we're supposed to be joyful. And the world needs that right now. The world needs to see that we're joyful and that we're trying to give God the honor and the glory. So if any tip, it's just like, stop being such a stick in the mud, stop being a wet blanket, and just change your focus around to actually trying to do what God called you to do. God called you to minister to people. So if God's calling you to minister to people, then do it in whatever way you can.
Amen.
Right.
And I don't think that means that we should be fighting and saying, we're going back to church no matter what happens. I don't care about Governor Cuomo or whatever. It's like, I don't think that's what we're supposed to be doing, because God is like water, and water, even if you put a dam up, the water's going to get through, and God's Spirit is getting through this thing. We need to be co-laborers with him and doing whatever we can to minister the gospel and to preach the good news. The Great Commission doesn't mean that you have to be in church. The Great Commission is all the time. So
that's awesome.
I'm a preacher.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
Keep going.
He went preacher on this. I love that you touched on the hard aspect on this. So that leaves me to do the digital stuff. So, the important thing that I found with creating a digital community is to keep it cohesive. So don't think of all of your meetings or Zoom calls or Q&As or videos or online services or whatever it is, or if you just have one of those things, don't think of them as different things. It's all part of the same conversation. So you're alluding to different things. So like we have prayer rooms, allude to it in the Sunday morning. And then if you're doing a Q&A, allude to the women's meetings, or, you know, like whatever it is, it's one conversation. You're trying to keep the community going. You're not trying to say, well, this is where you go if you're going to do that. That's how we create silos. You don't want silos in the church now. You want a community. So if that's what we're trying to do, we need to keep it cohesive. And just practically, if you're new to the online game and you're just getting started on social platforms, try and keep your handle consistent. So if you're, you know, like for instance, I try and as far as possible to get WGF Indiana, which is our church, on YouTube, at Instagram, at Twitter, at Facebook. If you hit WGF Indiana, you should be able to find us. So regardless of what was the website again, you know, you're not trying to worry with all of that. So try and keep it consistent.
Yeah, that's good. So good. Well, thank you all so much for sharing your heart with us on how to create digital community. I know I learned a lot. I got a lot of great tidbits out of our time today. So I'm so excited. After Pastor Josh was sharing, I was like, let's take up an offering. You know, he's getting in it. It was great. I loved it.
PCFarcade@gmail or PCFarcade, PCFarcade.org. Yeah.
Josh, I'm glad you said what you said, because I'm more excited than ever right now in church world with how God is going to be glorified and how his name is being spread. And Jodi, even to Elim Fellowship, like Elim has stepped up their game in this, and I'm noticing that, and I'm appreciative of that, like the different resources and the effort, like it's not going unnoticed. And so thank you to Elim Fellowship for just what they're striving and endeavoring to do for their people. Like it says a lot, and I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more of those Alex Seidler cooking videos.
Alex, he just posted another one today, so
can he get sponsored by EF for those videos?
That would be wonderful. We'll have to see if he can get
some side cash,
some side money on the side with our cooking videos, cooking with COVID-19.
Tell him I'm waiting to hear his Indian accent.
That's Indian accent. Oh, he will. I'll tell him that'll be his next one. We'll do some curry. And we'll get some accents in there for him.
Stir happy time.
Stir happy time. Yes, he's crazy. I'm just like sitting in the background watching him do these videos, so it's pretty entertaining watching him do the videos.
That's
to get the behind the scenes look.
But that kind of creativity, it's like the creativity that he's using. I'm sorry, I'm going on another soapbox. It's like God has created, he's the creator, and we are creators too. So it's like, whether you're like, I think somebody said it, maybe it was you, Jodi, that said, you know, some things might work for different churches and different communities, and the DNA of your church. Well, believe it or not, my DNA of, you know, the church I'm at, thank God, is humor. So, I mean, whatever it is, you don't have to get stuck in a box, people. You don't have to do exactly what I did or what Laurie did or what Judah did. You can do whatever you want. Whatever God's leading you to do, just be creative. God gave that to you, and it's fun.
And the cool thing is there are so many people like that in our church who we just haven't found. So don't say, wait, well, we don't have a team like that. Put the word out, you'll be surprised.
That's right.
That's so true. I think even as you're mentioning, as Elim Fellowship, we're finding like, hey, we have this army of people, and it's almost like forcing our hand, which we should have been doing a long time ago. Like one of you mentioned, the church is kind of behind the curve, but it's like, let's engage our army. Like I don't have to be the one to have all these ideas and have all these things. Like, let me activate the army that we have and say, you all are awesome. What are you doing? What are you learning? And I have to admit, I researched some of your stuff that you're doing. So I was excited. I saw Judah Thomas, you guys do the word bar. Pastor Laurie, I saw you guys have done, like, for Easter, you did this cool, like, do a photo backdrop and share it and different things like that. Your church has been doing creative things like that. Josh Wypij, I see yours has like a 48-hour prayer sign up. I just pinpointed some little things that you all are doing, but to know, even like what you were saying, Pastor Josh, about the creativity, where you're finding, hey, this is what works for us. It doesn't have to be an online service. It can be something fun, something quirky. that you're doing. So thank you so much, pastors, for all that you've been doing to create community in this season, all that the effort that you've putting in. It's amazing to see. And for me, I was like behind the scenes researching. I'm like, oh my word, that's such a good idea. And oh, that's so fun. And oh my word, like just to see how you guys are activating your communities. So once again, thank you so much. And for everyone who is watching, thank you so much for watching. And we hope that you will join us next week as we begin to talk about working with remote teams. So we will see you then. Bye.